live careers webinars brought to you on the Hertfordshire Opportunities portal. So this is a portal that I hope some of you will be familiar with, or if not, that you will be able to access it very soon. We'll make sure we give you plenty of reminders about it. So HOP stands for the Hertfordshire Opportunities portal. It is a web address specifically aimed at young people and students for schools in Hertfordshire or the surrounding areas, and it will give you a whole host of information about careers. So we'll be talking about careers in law today, but on the HOP website, you'll be able to find lots of very, very general information about the sorts of careers and opportunities that there are available within Hertfordshire. You can access the careers directory, which will give you a database really about any sorts of jobs that are available, and there's actually a jobs directory on there, so you could go and search for any live vacancies or apprenticeship opportunities that there might be out there. So please do go and have a look at the HOP website. It's hopefully very easy to use and to find, and we've got our social media platforms as well, which you should be able to see on the screen down in front of you. So if you're on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, have a look at those. Well done for taking the time to come and join this session today. So these careers webinars we've been running since about May last year, and they're an opportunity for you as students in Hertfordshire schools to hear directly from people who are doing jobs that you are interested in finding out a little bit more about. So every week we pick a different career, and this week we're looking at careers in law. Now this is a very, very popular one. In fact, my screen keeps flashing telling me that attendees are trying to get in because we've actually reached capacity. So if any of your friends are trying to get onto this webinar at the moment and telling you that it won't let them in, it's because unfortunately we've reached our peak of 101 participants in here already. So just to reassure you, we are recording this session. So if any of your friends can't get in, please do let them know that this session will be recorded and it will be made available on our YouTube channel, probably at some point tomorrow morning. But well done for you for getting in and for giving up your time to come in and attend this session today. So we hope over the course of the next hour or so, you will feel really, really well informed and you'll feel really well inspired about careers in law, and you'll know all that you want to know about the next steps that you might need to take, and you'll find out a little bit more about the realities of the job and actually whether it is the right career for you. So just give you a little bit of housekeeping. So I've told you this session is going to be recorded. So if you can't stay until the end of the session, then you will be able to watch it back at a later date, or you can just watch it back again and try and remember some of the things that were discussed on here. If you want to ask any questions of our panelists as we go through, you can do. So in the questions tab on your dashboard, if you open that out, you'll see that a text box comes in there. You can type your question in and then it will come through. It won't be visible to anyone else except for me, and then I will signpost that to the relevant panelist who is best placed to answer that. In the meantime, if I just ask you, if you have got any questions, could you just make sure that you hold on to them until we've gone through all the main discussion, because it may well be that we answer your question, and my colleague who is moderating those questions will be overwhelmed, I'm sure, with the number of questions you get. So if you think of questions, get them in there and we will try and answer as many of them as we can. Just to make you aware, we can't see or hear any of you, but hopefully you can see and hear us as we're going through. Yes, so the recording will be made available. At the end of it, we'll give you a link to our YouTube site. There's a QR code that you can click onto, but onto the HOP website, they are all available on there. So yes, it will be available on there tomorrow, the person who's asked that question. So let me introduce you to our panelists first of all. So our panelists today are going to cover a wide variety of, I think, some of the questions that you will probably want to know. So we have, I share my screen with you now, see that? We've got Julie Manson, who is a lecturer in law from the University of Hertfordshire, and Julie has got experiences working in practice as well, which she'll share with you. Then we have Jess Smith, who is a trainee solicitor from Raiden Solicitors based in St Albans, and we have one of her colleagues, Georgina Allen, who is also a solicitor with Raiden, who are a firm of family solicitors, and Georgina's had a very interesting route and perhaps a non-conventional route into the role that she's in, which I'm sure she will tell you about shortly. So if I could ask all of you, starting with Julie, to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your background in law.
Hi everybody, my name is Julie Manson. I work at the University of Hertfordshire. I teach company law and business law to law students there, and I'm also the Director for Employability for the law school, so I help students with their career goals and their personal development towards their career goals. I was myself a solicitor in my 20s, working as a corporate lawyer in London and in Berkshire, and I've worked in a couple of different colleges or universities teaching law courses, and worked in an international law firm doing a learning and development, so a training role there. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Julie. And Jess, if you could tell us a little bit about you, please.
Hi everyone, so I'm Jess. As Gareth explained, I'm a trainee solicitor at Raiden Solicitors. Currently, I am due to qualify at beginning of March after having completed a training contract with Raiden Solicitors. I have done the conventional route into law, which I'm sure you'll hear more about, but basically degree, law courses, some work experience, and then a training contract. So yeah, and I'm going to qualify at Raiden's as a family solicitor.
Okay, good. We'll look forward to hearing more about your experiences as we go on. Jess, Georgina, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Georgina Allen. I'm a solicitor at Raiden Solicitors. To everybody but my clients, I'm George. I am a solicitor now, and I took the unconventional route towards qualification. I actually left college before completing my A-levels, having given up on my lofty ideals of wanting to qualify as a journalist, and started working in an administrative role, and then I decided that that wasn't particularly interesting, and started working at a law firm, and then proceeded to work my way up while studying over a period of 10 years, stopping at the stages of legal secretary and then paralegal, and then qualifying as a legal executive before going on to qualifying as a solicitor. So as I say, 10 years in the making, and I finally qualified as a solicitor in September 2019.
Okay, thank you for those introductions, and we will explore more about your career journeys as we go on. The first section that we are going to look at is really, what does a lawyer do? So what are the different strands of law that someone might go into, and about the nitty-gritty of the role, so perhaps what's enjoyable about it, and perhaps some of the things that people don't appreciate about your role. So, I mean, Julie, first of all, could you just clarify, what's the difference between a lawyer and a solicitor?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, because it's easy to get them confused. A lawyer is a general term, really, so that's for anybody that works in the legal world. So that might be somebody that is a solicitor or a barrister, a legal executive, a paralegal, an assistant lawyer. It's all sorts of different descriptions that you can use for the role of lawyer. Within that, though, there are some set sort of career routes that you might follow. So you might become a solicitor or a barrister or a legal executive or a paralegal. And they're all different in that there are different ways of achieving those. You can move between them as well, as Georgina has. The main ones that you hear about are legal executive, solicitor, and barrister. And there are different exams that you would need to go through after you've done your degree or qualified through an apprenticeship route to take you into those different areas. Very, very broadly speaking, if you need some sort of day-to-day legal advice, you wanted to go and speak to somebody to get legal advice, you would probably go to a solicitor, paralegal, or legal executive. If you needed something more specialist, or you needed somebody to represent you in some of the courts, then that solicitor would then put you in touch with a barrister. So if you hear about a barrister, you would usually go to a barrister after you've been through a solicitor. A bit like if you go to the doctors and then you need to go and get some sort of specialist advice at a hospital.
Sure. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Georgina, then what are the different strands of law that someone might want to go into?
Well, it's quite a diverse area, so it could cover pretty much anything, but the sort of usual areas of practice will be family law, which of course I would say is the best. And then more general litigation and dispute resolution, which could be anything from personal injury to arguing about your mother's estate after she's died, to suing your neighbour because he's built his property a centimetre over the boundary to your properties. Then you've got probate and wills, which is quite a popular area to go into. So that's writing people's wills and then dealing with their estates after death. And you've got conveyancing, selling and buying properties. And then you can get into much more interesting areas like sports and media or intellectual property, none of which I've ever been able to get into, but I understand that generally when students go off to university, that's what they think they might get into, or criminal law, which everybody will have some knowledge of through TV or from the books they read, and that tends to be more standing up in court and well, dealing with the really nitty-gritty areas of law.
Okay, all right, thanks for explaining those. I'm sure lots of people have questions about which are perhaps the most enjoyable or which are the ones to steer away from. Jeff, you're a trainee solicitor at the moment, so I don't know how well you're versed to answer this one, but what does an average day or week look like for you?
So the first thing I'd say is that the average week is going to look very different depending on which area of law you go into. And I've only actually done 2 areas of law, so I can talk about those. So in family law, the main thing I like about it actually is that every day is really different, and obviously every client is different, every family is different, and that brings diversity basically into your job. So it means you're doing different things for different clients every day. So one day you might be in a court hearing, one day you might be drafting documents, statements, applications for a client, one day you might just be dealing with a lot of correspondence back and forth between solicitors or courts. You might be seeking counsel's advice and getting opinion of counsel. Basically every day is very varied and very different in this area of law. My only other experience is private client, so that was the wills, probate area, and I'd say that was quite different because it's non-contentious, which means there's very little litigation and court hearings, and a lot of your days are spent drafting wills for clients, powers of attorney, just advising them generally on estate planning rather than having battles in court or against other sides about issues. So yeah, I think it really depends on which area of law you decide to go into as to what your day is going to look like.
For sure. Julie, what's the most enjoyable aspects of the role? I'm going to try and think perhaps as generally as possible.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to when I was a solicitor myself, and I worked in corporate work, so we were working on deals really, so people buying and selling companies or breaking up their business and doing things like that. I loved the teamwork of it, working with other people within your team within the law firm, but also within the client, and that whole feeling of achievement when you got something done. Hard work, but really rewarding to get through that at the end. Yeah, I just think it's that sense of, you have a real sense of purpose. You're always helping someone to achieve their goals or to get the outcomes that they're trying to get. It's very real. So I obviously teach now at university, and we teach about what people are going to do, but the best thing we can give them actually is some real experience of that, because when you become a lawyer, when you're working, you're in real life situations and having to deal with things that really matter to people. So it's the enjoyment is working with lots of people to help them.
Yeah, Okay, I think, well, Georgina, I suppose specifically from the family solicitor's perspective, what are the challenging aspects of the role, or what are the bits that perhaps people wouldn't aware of or perhaps wouldn't consider before they think that this might be the career for them?
Well, I think probably it's something that people will consider, but not necessarily be ready for the impact of. And that is that ultimately, when you're a family lawyer, you are dealing with people when they're at incredibly difficult points in their life. They might be facing a divorce, they might be involved in a battle about child arrangements for their children following a separation. And so you're going to be dealing with people who are emotional and who can be difficult to deal with. And you have to be prepared not only to be a lawyer, but in part to be a friend and to be a counsellor and somebody that can help to guide them through their experience. And that can be incredibly rewarding. And it can be very difficult because ultimately we are human too, despite what some people say about lawyers, and that takes its toll on our emotions as well.
Okay, what about from your perspective, Jess? I mean, how hard is the training? And presumably you've got to be pretty resilient to be able to withstand just a program of education that's as long as that.
Yeah, so I think the process in itself is a challenge before you even get to the qualification role. Obviously, it involves a lot of years of studying, and it involves like compulsory training periods, which you have to secure with employers. And for me, that was a challenge because you can make however many applications, but there are hundreds and hundreds of people also making the same applications. And it's very, very competitive industry to get into. So I think, yeah, resilience is key, and not being aware that it's going to take hard work to get to where you want to be eventually. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, Judy, from your perspective and some of the students that you've worked with, is there anything that any aspects of the role that perhaps people don't realise when they sign up for it that they should be aware of?
As a lawyer?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess a bit like Jess was saying, really, it is hard work. It's really rewarding, but it is hard work, and it's a long period of commitment to work towards being a legal professional. I guess also it's you need that fundamental knowledge and understanding of the law, and that's crucial. Obviously, to be a lawyer, you need to be an expert in your legal field, but you need to have lots of other skills and attributes as well. And perhaps those aren't the things that you're necessarily thinking about when you're thinking about which courses to study. But it's really important to get as much experience as possible that shows that you've got the skills that employers would be looking for as a lawyer. And that would really be almost sort of a business-minded approach as well, you know, understanding how the business you work in works, understanding what your clients need, being very good at managing yourself and managing your workload and managing the projects that you're working on is really important. And also nowadays being unafraid of using technology to help you, whether that's you using it or people around you, and being really confident with using Excel, Word, emails, and being very clear in your communications, being very client focused. A lot of people, when they're studying, will also have other jobs that enable them to interact with the public, with clients, and all of those skills are really important as a lawyer because you are providing a service to customers, to the clients that are paying the fees to the law firm. So there's lots of different aspects of you that are important as well as your legal expertise, and it's important to try and get that experience now.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good segue into the next section. So we're going to think about now how to become a lawyer. And before we talk about the sorts of subjects that people might do when they want to go into law, first question, you've really answered it there. What are the skills and qualities that lawyers and solicitors have? So let me move on from that one and let's start talking about subjects. So Julie, what subject should someone be doing at, well, A level if they think that law is the career they want to follow?
There's no rule about it, actually. When you have a look at the university entry requirements to go and study law, the most important thing is your grades, because the better your grades, the more choices you have. The entry requirements for law vary from 3 A's to 3 C's, roughly, I would say, at A level, and the equivalent at BTEC. So the important thing is to choose things that you really enjoy and that you're good at, so that you maximise your marks in your A levels, and that does give you those options. I did a mixture really myself. I did economics, maths and French for A level, and I studied law as a degree. And people that I studied with and people that I teach now have all got a very big mix of A levels. There's no rule about it. Quite common to see English and history, but by no means is that required. And in fact, the legal profession is often quite interested in students that have done other things like sciences as well. So my view is it actually doesn't matter what you do, but if you are interested in a particular university, do have a look at their requirements, because they may specify that certain A levels they aren't as interested in. There's not many like that, but it may well be that they want you to maybe focus on things like history, English, etc. But it's unusual. Most universities are quite open-minded about your subjects. They're looking at your grades. Sure.
So I mean, that's a really important, and this is very consistent with a lot of the other webinars that we've run, actually, apart from sort of the science ones, that to an extent it really doesn't matter what A levels you do or what grades or which A level grades you get. It's the fact that, well, have a look at the particular university you want to go to, as Julie said, and see if they have got any specific asks that they have, but really any A levels are going to be beneficial for you. I mean, I'm sure you'd say, Julie, that English and maths at GCSE is going to be a prerequisite.
Yes, definitely, yeah. And universities will require that to be often a 6 or maybe a 5, occasionally a 4 at GCSE, but those will be required, yeah. And some do say science as well.
Okay, and then just for context, let's tell everybody what A levels you guys did. So Julie, what were your A levels?
So I did economics, which was my favourite, and actually has been quite useful in the business law world. I did French and maths.
French and maths, okay. And Jess?
I also did economics and maths and geography. So yeah, range.
Yeah, okay. And ready for the punchline here. Georgina, which A levels did you do?
I didn't do any. I went to college and I set about doing all the AS levels to become a journalist, and then realised that wasn't going to be what I did, and left before I completed anything.
So yes, I mean, that gives you kind of a real range there of different A levels or different choices that you can make post 16. Julie, just thinking about some of your students you've got at the University of Hertfordshire, are there any common subjects that they've done?
No, there aren't, but we do have quite a lot that have done business studies, because we have quite a lot of intake from local colleges where they've done business studies as a BTEC or an A level. But that's certainly not a requirement. That just happens to be the case. Other than that, it is a real mixture. A lot have done things like politics, psychology, English, some maths as well. Yeah, I'm off the top of my head, I can think of every subject. So I think they've really gone with the ones that they really enjoyed at GCSE and taken them on into A level.
Yeah, we had a few questions that were submitted in advance, actually, and so one of them is, I know that some schools offer an A level in or equivalent in law. So the question was, how does law and university differ from law at A level?
I didn't do A level law myself, but I'm aware of the content of it, and it is a really nice introduction to what you would do at degree level for law. It's certainly not required. And actually, you would probably cover pretty much all of the topics again in your first year of your law degree if you do choose to do law. So maybe that you might choose law, but you don't have to, because you're not going to miss out by doing so.
Yeah, okay. Julie, a lot of these questions are going to be for you because it's the nature of the questions and of your role. But this one, we're talking about university and degrees here, but do you need to go to university? Are there, obviously, Georgina didn't, but are there apprenticeship opportunities, and if so, at which level?
So there are apprenticeship opportunities, and if Jess or Georgina have any knowledge of this, please do interrupt. But yes, you can go into apprenticeships at level 3 and level 6 for law. So you can be a paralegal apprentice, you can be a solicitor apprentice. So it takes a number of years to go through that route, but you would go into that after you've done your A levels. I think the entry requirement for that will really depend on the employer that takes you on as an apprentice. So you're probably looking at a minimum of 3 Cs for A level. Again, like everything else, the higher the better, it gives you more options. So yes, that's definitely a route. It's a bit tricky at the moment because of the sort of conditions in the employment market for getting apprenticeships, but law firms are really interested in doing this because obviously they do have to set money aside for apprenticeship programs. So a lot of big law firms are making more investment into apprenticeships, as well as smaller law firms as well, because they can see the attraction in doing that. So a very good alternative route to doing a degree, and it gives you the equivalent of a degree at the end of the process.
Yeah, so I mean, next week is National Apprenticeship Week, so I'm sure that everyone's going to hear a lot about apprenticeships in the next week or so. But just to clarify, if you did a degree apprenticeship in law, it would ultimately get you to exactly the same place as going in and doing a degree straight from school.
That's right, yes. So you would work and study at the same time.
Yeah,
exactly.
Great. Okay, this question I think would probably best going to Jess, actually. What did the transition from finishing university to becoming a solicitor look like?
So if we're talking about finishing university as in first degree, following that, I didn't do a law degree, so I did a business management degree, which meant that I had to do a year law conversion course. So I came out of uni, did a year law conversion course in London, and then anyone who wants to practice as a solicitor or barrister then has to do an additional course. Depending on which route you take, you do a different course. So then I did that. That's another year. I did it full time studying, so that was an extra 2 years of studying. And then I started working as a paralegal in a law firm in London, and I did that for 2 years. Just to get experience, and whilst I was doing that, I was applying for training contracts, and most training contracts are 2 years long. So yeah, the degree is definitely not the end of the process if you choose to take that route. There's a lot more steps to get to qualification from there.
Yeah. Okay. I'll ask Georgina this question to start with. Are there any extracurriculars that would be beneficial for studying law at university? So, I mean, I'm going to broaden that out from university, but are there things you think perhaps in more ordinary life or in the school community, or experiences that young people could be getting that will start to prepare them for what a career in law might look like?
I think that it's really good to get experience working with people that are older than you, and to develop your communication skills in that way. A little bit unconventional, but I worked in a nursing home in my teenage years, and I actually think that paid off hugely later on in life, because it's meant that from an early age I was used to talking to people not just at my age level. In fact, I preferred talking to people above my age level than my own age level. So anything that gets you out, meeting new people, pushing you beyond your comfort zone, and developing communication skills has to be a good thing. And I also think get out there and get experience if you can. Go to a law firm for a week and give them a week of free photocopying, do whatever you can, because people will spare you 10 minutes here and there and give you insights into their working day that could make or break your decision about whether you want a career in law.
Yeah, thank you. Julie, is that something that you'd echo, or any perhaps other tips you could give, or what would you say to your students, things they could be doing outside of the classroom?
I think that you've got to think quite creatively at the moment to try and get as much experience and exposure to the legal profession or the world of law as you can. Outside of coronavirus, I would be saying go along to your local court and sit and watch what's going on there and see the comings and goings that happen. I would, like Georgina said, try and get some work experience in a law firm. I'd also get a job that involves you in having to show your commitment to work and dealing with tricky situations, perhaps sometimes, you know, just sheer hard work, like in restaurants and shops that you come across, because all of that is attractive on a CV, because it does show that you have got that ability to work hard and to understand the importance of that quality of client service. A lot of our students at Hertfordshire tended to work in the Galleria or in restaurants in the towns of Hertfordshire, and we really encourage them to put that on their CV, because it does show those kind of skills, those teamwork and things like being reliable as well. So that's important. I think also trying to get embrace online stuff as much as you can at the moment. I get my students to join LinkedIn from starting their degree, to join LinkedIn, set up a profile, start following important organisations, and there is a huge amount of free stuff available via LinkedIn and via other platforms as well. So from Instagram Live to TikTok to Facebook to everything else, you can search law careers, solicitor, barrister, etc. And lots of information is on there just to give you an idea of what it's like to work in the law. And the more you do that, the more you then find out, and then the more you've got to talk about as to why you're interested in law when you're making your personal statement. What attracts you to doing law or becoming a lawyer, and what makes you think you would be good at law and good at potentially becoming a legal professional. So there are things you can do even in lockdown.
Yeah, sure. Jess, anything that you did whilst you were studying that you think further enhanced your knowledge?
Yeah, I'd say when you're at uni, most unis have a really good career service and give really good advice, and also have options for volunteering. So when I was at uni, I did like a legal clinic, which involved making calls to people and giving them advice. And that's a really good experience to put on your CV. I also volunteered at the Citizens Advice Bureau locally to where I live. And that was also really helpful, because you can train there to be an advisor on all sorts of different subjects, but just it's getting you used to dealing with clients and communicating, just speaking and being around with people is a really, really vital skill. So I'd say if there's any way you can volunteer, if it involves any sort of advice, even better. Yeah, that's the sort of things that I did when I was studying.
Yep. Okay, all right, thank you. Possibly there'll be some more questions coming in about that. Very quickly, last section we want to go through before we go to the questions that are being submitted, and this is just the prospects for the legal profession. So just to reassure you really that you're investing your time and energy now into a career that there is going to be demand for in the near and long-term future. So I mean, Julie, first of all, what level of demand is there for lawyers now, and how do you think that's likely to change in the future?
There's a huge demand for legal advice. So lots of people are in need of legal advice at the moment, whether that's because they're involved in the criminal justice system, or because they're trying to claim on their insurance and not getting any joy, or they're having family related issues, or trying to move house. So there's no question that there'll always be a demand for legal services. The challenge at the moment is the job market. So if you take the example of becoming a solicitor, and as Jess mentioned, you need to get usually a 2-year training contract to qualify. Getting the training contract is a real challenge. It's always a competitive market, but getting those jobs at the moment is more difficult because a lot of firms have put their recruitment on hold. So looking at the markets and the job market at the moment, plenty of demand for legal service. Getting the job at the moment can be a bit tricky, but it is expected over the next couple of years, all things being equal and everything crossed, that the economy will get back to where it should be in 2 years' time. So it's going to take a while, but that's good news for people that are listening to this, because by the time you go on to do your degree and then graduate, we hope that there will be a real uptick in the economy and more jobs for graduates. So I think it's fair to say that looking short term, it's tricky, but medium and then long term, the trends are looking good. In Hertfordshire, we've got a lot of law firms. We've got about 50, I think, law firms, let alone all the companies and other businesses that we have that that use lawyers or have lawyers that they employ. So lots of job opportunities. And also, of course, we're so close to London that it's very easy to commute. And London is the biggest legal employer possibly in the world, actually. I'm not sure about that, but certainly in Europe in terms of job opportunities. So the job opportunities will carry on. They're a bit stagnant at the moment, but expected to increase in the future. The other thing to be aware of, doing a law degree isn't just about becoming a lawyer, and there are lots of other opportunities that you can use your law degree for. One in particular to be aware of at the moment is the public sector. Public sector is the biggest employer in the UK, and that would be looking at areas like working in government, working in policing, probation, and the prison service, and a law degree is really useful for that as well. It's a really good foundation.
Yeah, good. Okay, no, that's an important point to make. Are there any developing trends within the industry? So do we suddenly need more family lawyers than we need criminal lawyers? What's going on? Is there more opportunities in certain areas going to open up, do you think?
Well, I think it depends to an extent on what the government decides to do by way of funding. There's a lot in the press at the moment, for those reading around this, on delays in the criminal justice system and people that have perhaps been accused of crimes not going to go to trial for the next 2 years, and they think it's going to take 10 years to catch up. So it will depend on what funding goes into the legal profession by way of legal aid, for example, and there's a lot of discussion around that at the moment. So there could well be job opportunities in criminal justice, but it will depend on what money goes into it. There's a lot of work coming up in the commercial world due to lots of changes, including Brexit, and also the economy is leading to lots of buying and selling of businesses. Unfortunately, lots of failed businesses as well that have become insolvent, and you'll hear about companies in the news like Debenhams and Topshop that have gone into administration or liquidation, and that leads to a lot of legal work, and that's anticipated to be a big area for legal work in the next few years. Litigation with things like insurance claims, often between insurers even, not just between individuals and insurance companies. So those are big areas. What else? There's quite a lot of property work on the horizon, I think. Yeah, sort of buying and selling of businesses. Yeah, I think those are the kind of main ones that would spring to mind.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're going to move on to the questions now that have been submitted by our audience watching live at the moment. So thanks. I can just have to see there's a lot that have come in, so we're going to try and get through these as quickly as we can. So thanks for submitting your questions. If you don't feel that we answer it directly, just drop in a follow-up question for us. So let's get into these then. I'm looking to take business law at university. Do you think I would need to take an LNAT, or does it depend on the university I attend? Julie?
That totally depends on the university you attend. So you'd have to look at the university's website. There's about 10 or 11 universities in the country that require you to take the legal aptitude test, the National Legal Aptitude Test. So most of them don't, but you do need to be careful of that. Yeah, so do research the universities.
Okay. Georgina, is the pay in every sector good?
Well, I don't think it's always what people expect it to be. I think that everybody has different perceptions of what would be a good salary. And I know that I recently gave a careers talk, and when I quoted what I considered to be quite high average figures, I was asked, well, is that gross or net? And I can't imagine having been in a position to ask that question myself at 17. So I think that it's important to do the research depending upon the area that you're interested in. I don't think that you should pick an area of law based upon what you can expect to earn, because I think that you're potentially going to be practicing for 40, 45 years, or maybe 50 by the time you reach retirement age. So it's probably more important to do something that you enjoy and are interested in. But no, I certainly couldn't tell you that criminal solicitor in a high street practice can expect to earn the same as a corporate lawyer in London. The world just doesn't work that way, even if arguably criminal law is much more important. So definitely do your research, but first of all, decide what you're interested in.
Sure. Jess, which TV programs would you recommend that encourages a career in law? Was there anything that inspired you that you saw on telly?
To be completely honest, most TV programs, and I'm sure Julie and Georgina will agree, do not perceive the law very accurately. But entertainment-wise, I guess a lot of people are probably watching Suits, and Suits is a really good one. But again, I'm not saying that it's representative of a career in law. But I guess most TV programs are dramatized, and they're there for entertainment purposes. So just don't take everything that you see on a TV program and think that that's what your life is going to be like if you become a lawyer, because it's not.
I think it's a really good question, Julie. What do you think?
No, I'm just thinking, I mean, I totally agree with Jess as well. I watched a film about a year ago, I guess, called Just Mercy. I don't know if anyone's seen that. And it's not what day-to-day life is like as a lawyer, but it really reflects the point that George just made, which is think about the reasons why you want to go into law. So that film it's set in the States, and it's about a young lawyer defending people on death row, getting paid nothing pretty much for doing his work. But it's about sense of purpose and really how he approached. It's a true story. It's from a book. I can't remember the name of the author, but it's an autobiography that's been turned into a film, I think. But I think that's one worth watching, even though it doesn't reflect what you might be doing on a day-to-day basis. It does give you some of those messages about the importance of the legal profession and how it would operate and how you would feel about it personally.
Yeah. I mean, I've read quite a few books written by criminal barristers, memoirs, but what about other aspects of law? Is there any other good literature that someone should read? What do you think, Georgina? Anything that you've read or become aware of?
Oh, so I generally get a law book for Christmas every year, which is slightly sad. But the Christmas before this one was a book called, I think it's In Your Defence. I can't remember the name of the barrister who wrote it, but she practices both criminal and family law. And it's based on her real life experiences of defending and prosecuting criminals, but also dealing with all sorts of horrible family disputes. And it's very good reading, very hard reading, but very good.
Okay, look, In Your Defence by Sarah Langford. Does that ring a bell?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so I'm looking out for that one.
Can I give you another book suggestion as we've moved on to books? Yeah. And it's called In Black and White, and it's Alexandra Wilson. She's a barrister, and she's fairly recently become a barrister, actually. She's quite young still, and she talks about what it's like to be a black female barrister, as well as being a barrister generally. And it's a really good book. And I don't have my copy because I've lent it to one of my students, but I think that's a really interesting insight into that particular profession.
Yep. Okay. Right. So there's two really good book suggestions there for you to have a look at. Georgina, next question for you. Do you choose your teams to work with, or are you just put with a group depending on specialities?
So we at Radens are a little bit different because we all practice family law. So we still work within teams according to our different offices. But if you were at a firm that had sort of multidisciplines, you would likely be put into a team with those practicing the same areas of law as you. So the last place that I worked, there was the sort of litigation dispute resolution section, and then the conveyancers all sort of hung out together, and then private client people as well. So I think that would probably be standard practice for most firms.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of questions here about applications really for university, Julie. So I'm going to ask both of these to you. I'll read them both out and then you answer them. So firstly, what do universities look for in law applications and how to prepare for LNAT interviews at some universities? And then another question, what are graduate recruit schemes like for students? Brackets, I understand it varies with each university, but are there any general themes or experiences when applying and getting on the schemes? So do you want to have a go at the first one first of all then, about preparation for the LNATs, specifically around the interviews?
Yeah, and there was one about what universities look for, I think, in applicants.
Yeah,
there's a website that I think is in your last slide, Gareth, that I really recommend, which is called the Lawyer Portal. That's an overview of all the different legal routes within the legal profession and what different lawyers do, and it also talks about different degrees and what to do with your personal statement in your application as well. Universities are looking for students who have a genuine interest in law. Doesn't mean that you have to know a lot about law, but you want to demonstrate that you have really thought about it and you've done some research, and you can talk about why you think you would be potentially a good lawyer as well. I think that's important. The Lawyer Portal website also has some information about the LNAT test. So there's information on there about what that involves. I think it involves some questions and also a short essay that you would need to do. And what was the other question? It was about
graduate schemes.
Graduates. So is that thinking about, I'm not quite sure about the question, so that's thinking about perhaps universities helping students when they graduate?
Yes. Let me read the question verbatim. What are graduate recruit schemes like for students? In brackets, I understand it varies with each university, but are there any general themes or experiences when applying and getting on the schemes?
Okay, so to give you an example then, a lot of law firms, particularly the ones that take lots of trainees, so some of the larger London law firms, for example, have graduate recruitment schemes in that they have various schemes like vacation schemes that they use to help recruit their future trainees. So people that will then do what Jess has just done, which is her 2 years of training. So we as a university, and every other university as well, will have a careers team who will help support students in that graduate recruitment process. And what I would say to anybody is those support facilities will be there, and you have to reach out to them and make it happen for you, and really get involved in the opportunities that are available for you. So for example, at Hertfordshire, every student in their degree will do what we call an assessment centre experience, which is a day of going through an assessment centre experience, which is what many recruiters use to recruit graduates now, and it involves an interview and a presentation and a team task as well. So universities do have those resources to help you go through the graduate recruitment process. So you have to use them and maximise those opportunities.
Sure. Jess, I'm going to ask you this question because it may well be that some of your peers that you studied with went down this route, but how can you get a summer internship at a law firm, and what are they looking for?
I think that's going to depend on the law firm. So some firms will offer a summer experience, which they call a vacation scheme, a VAC scheme. And I know when I was applying for training contracts, a lot of the applications for VAC schemes and summer schemes are just the same as training contracts. So a lot of them, it involves submitting a quite detailed application and then going through an interview process just to get that experience. Some other maybe smaller, more high street firms, you probably could just approach them, write in a cover letter, explain that you are looking for work experience, set out what you are doing currently, where you're at with your education, and just give it a shot, because the worst that can happen is that they say no. I'm guessing at the moment it's all a bit up in the air because we don't know where we're going to be at in the summer. But if we are being optimistic, then hopefully by the summer we will still be starting to get back into offices, which means that law firms and other employers can be offering more work experience in the office with people to learn from there. So yeah, I'd say it just depends on where you're looking to do the experience. It depends on that as to what you need to do to get it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, Georgina, from your having been in practice for a while, have you seen many interns come and go, and is there something that stands some apart from others that you've worked with?
It's probably not. I'm probably not the right person to ask the question, because until the beginning of last year, I was based in a high street firm in Cornwall, and I can tell you that there aren't many internships down there. So I probably can't really give you very much insight on that.
No, okay. Question: is criminal law a very difficult field of law to get into? So we talked about demand in particular areas, Julie. I mean, is that the one that most of your students initially think they want to go into?
It's a real mixture, actually. We've probably got about 1,000 students at the University of Hertfordshire, maybe about 700 studying law, and there's a real mixture of what they want to do, but we do have a substantial proportion that do want to go into criminal litigation. A lot of them are looking at working for the Crown Prosecution Service. So that's the body that, it's an independent body, but that's the body to which the police would refer a case if they wanted it to go to court. And the CPS, as it's called, is full of lawyers that have the job of prosecuting criminal cases. So that would be on one side of a criminal action. And then obviously you need somebody to defend the people as well. So that's what we call criminal defence work. So we have a lot of students that want to go into that as well. This is probably at the lower end of the pay scale when you're talking about salary, but it's one that's very popular because intrinsically that's something that students want to do. And they look to get experience as much as they can while at university. And as Jess mentioned, we do have lots of volunteer opportunities at university. We've got a Hertfordshire Law Clinic at Hertfordshire, and we also get involved in our local prison and police service to find opportunities for people to get exposed to what it might be like to be a certain type of lawyer. So it's not that it's not easy or difficult to get into. It's a demanding role being a criminal lawyer. You do often do work as a duty solicitor as well, which means that you are on a rota to go and get called into police stations in the middle of the night. But that's what a lot of people want to do, and we do have a large number of our students that are keen to do that.
Yep, okay. This one I think is probably just a yes/no question. Judy, can you get an apprenticeship at 16? Or do you think the law apprenticeships start
Not
for
that
18?
I know of. No, I'm not sure of the answer to that question, because the ones that I'm familiar with are when people have got A levels. So that would need a bit more research.
Okay, fine. Julie, I need you to bite your lip as I ask Jessica this question, but I will give you a chance to answer it. So, Jess, which are the best universities for law?
I didn't study law, so I'm probably also not the best person to ask. I know that the traditional route when I was at school and I was applying for unis, all of my teachers just pushed down my throat to go to a Russell Group Red Brick University, but I don't think necessarily now that matters. As long as you have a degree and you do well in that degree, I think that's enough for you to progress in the law. Julie, I don't know if you have a different opinion to that.
I think that's fair. I think there's a sort of traditionalist view, and then there is a modern view as to what makes a good lawyer. I think law firms are really interested in looking at people as individuals in the round. What can they offer? They look at academic ability, and that will be reflected in A-level results, in degree results as well. But I think more and more people are realising in the recruitment side that what makes a good lawyer isn't just necessarily which university you went to or what your degree results were, but what else you can offer. I think, yeah, I mean, when we talk about the traditional approach, I think there is a certain reputation that comes with certain universities as being very academic. And then you have what's sometimes called the post-1992 universities, those that used to be called polytechnics, where the approach is more hands-on, experiential learning, with things like the law clinic that we have. So it's a real mixture. It's hard to say now. I think really the good thing about choosing law is I think every university has a law degree and it gives you a lot of options. And there's all sorts of reasons why people choose different universities. It may be that you want to live at home and go to a local university, so you've got Hertfordshire and you've also got all the London area universities on your doorstep, but it may be you want to go away from home and study law somewhere else. I would also say look at the programs that are on offer, because they all have different content and everything that the university also offers by way of experience for you. So look at extracurricular activities and the opportunity to get more things for your CV.
Yep. Okay. This question specifically for Jess: is it difficult to transfer from different careers and degrees, e.g. biology, which I know wasn't your one, to go into law? So, I mean, looking back, do you wish you'd done law to start with, or do you think actually doing the law conversion, having done your degree in the first place, made it easier?
I chose not to do a law degree because I wanted to have my business management degree meant that I have a real a variety of skills which I could use in any career, and still would be, if I wanted to change career at some point, I have lots of transferable skills from that degree that I can use elsewhere. So I wouldn't change it, no. The only thing I would say is that the law conversion course that I did basically involves fitting a 3-year law degree into 1 year, and it was quite intense, and there was a lot of content to fit in, and the exam process was not fun at all. So no, I wouldn't say that I regret doing a different degree, and I think that any degree gives you transferable skills that you can use in the law anyway. So I don't think it put me at disadvantage to get to where I am now.
Okay. Georgina, you obviously come to it from a very different angle. If you had your time again and you were going to go back to when you were 16, would you have done the route that you've done, or do you think you might have been more beneficial going down the more traditional route?
I don't think you could really plan to do what I did, because a lot of it, I used to have this argument with my boss. I said I've been very lucky, and he said no, you've worked hard, and I said well, it's probably a mixture of the two, because you have to have the opportunities to work hard in the first place. So I think that if I could go back to my 16-year-old self and say it will be okay, it's all going to work out, then I would, because I think 16-year-old me probably would have quite liked to have heard that. But I think if I could go back and give 16-year-old me a stern talking to and say, look, you're actually going to have a very fulfilling career in law, and if you get your skates on, then you can probably start enjoying that a little bit sooner. Then I actually really enjoyed studying law as an academic subject, and I'd quite like to be able to go back and have 3 years in university debating it and not having any responsibility at the same time, but it's worked out okay.
Yeah, I mean, Julie, just to conclude this particular subject, what would you say to someone if they're considering which degree they want to do? Law's very much in their mind. Should they go in and do the law degree straight away, or do you think perhaps like Jessica and Georgina have done, go and get some other experiences, or go and study some other areas first?
I'm going to not give a very definite answer to that question. I think when it comes to your investment in your future, in the 3 years that you're going to spend at least studying, you want to really love what you do, and lots of students love law. So I think I would recommend studying law. I think it's a really enjoyable subject, but it's relevant to everything. Everything that we do has a legal basis around it. It's around us all of the time, and you'll notice that more and more once you study law. So I do think it's a great degree to do, and it opens lots of doors, but equally it's not essential. You can transfer later. It will just take you a bit longer. And although the way that you qualify as a solicitor is changing at the moment, so for students listening now, it will be a different route in the future. There will still probably be another 2 years of studying for you to do after your degree if you don't do law, 1 year if you do. So it does add, because you've still got to get that legal knowledge up there somehow.
Yeah. Okay. Georgina, is there a good work-life balance in law?
I think it probably is what you make it, and I think it will also depend significantly on where you work and in which area of law you practice. You have to be prepared to work hard, and inevitably that means putting in long hours sometimes. I think there's a learning process to go through when you come into practice, to work out how you can balance that to stay well in your own mental health, and to make sure that all the important things outside of work are being tended to as well. So I think lawyers tend to be workaholics inherently. I think we generally all enjoy our jobs, and I know particularly at the moment in lockdown it's quite hard to leave my laptop at night because there are interesting things to be done and not very much interesting going on outside of my little office. But yeah, I think you have to be prepared to put in the long hours, but I think in the long run it will balance itself out. You'll find the balance.
Sure, good answer. Right, just going to go through a couple more questions because we're just past 4:30 now. Any questions that we haven't been able to ask and get answers for you, we will try and follow up with the panelists and see if we can get them at least in written form for you. Here's one. Hi, I'm currently in year 9. So I wanted to ask what subjects I should take for my GCSEs. My strongest subject is maths. I mean, is this the same as A-levels, Julie, that there's no particular GCSEs? You talked about having English and maths and getting levels, what, 5 or 6 in that one, but any other GCSEs that might be a good standing?
No, I think the important thing is just to do as well as you can. There are, yeah, I think it's getting the good grades for your GCSEs that get you into the A levels that you want to do, that then get you into the degree that you want to do. So I think the great thing about law is what you choose at GCSE and A level is quite open.
Yeah, great. Okay. What is the difference between going into a small law firm versus a magic circle firm? Julie, do you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, I will do. I have worked in a magic circle firm as a trainer rather than a lawyer. It's sheer size in most cases, really. So I worked in a firm that had thousands of people working for it all over the world, and a lot of their clients are companies. So rather than the sort of work that Jess and Georgina do, where they're seeing individuals, actual human beings on a day-to-day basis, in the bigger corporate, what we call corporate firms generally, your clients tend to be big companies. So where I worked, some of the big banks and the retail industry that you might be familiar with. So that's very different. You also have big teams of other people that work with you in the bigger firms as well. So you have a whole team of people that do marketing, people that do compliance work, human resources teams, etc. So dealing with sheer numbers of people is a big difference. I think in some of the bigger firms, the pay is higher for solicitors, but then the demands can be higher as well. So the work-life balance can be a little bit different, although firms are seeking to do that differently as well.
Sure. Okay. You mentioned many different fields of law, but I wanted to know more about the more obscure types, such as human rights and environmental law. How difficult would it be to enter these fields? Julie, do you want to first go at that one, and then if Jess or Georgina want to, they're both nodding their heads or smiling. So go on, Julie, you have the first crack at that one.
Yeah, well, those are the ones that students are very interested in, certainly when they're doing their degree as well. There aren't as many jobs doing that kind of work on a day-to-day basis, simply because that work is very specialised, but that's not to say it doesn't exist. And what people might want to do that are interested in those areas is to do a bit more research on those and look at the kind of jobs that people do in those fields. So, for example, there are barristers that just do human rights work, but there aren't that many people that do just human rights work. So certainly those jobs do exist. They're just less common than some of the other work that you come across.
Yeah. Okay. Jess, was that ever an option for you? Is that something you ever thought about doing, any of those more perhaps obscure types?
I actually did do some work experience in a human rights team in London, but again, for you to find a team that does human rights, it is, as Julie said, there's not very many that do it, and just by nature it means that it's more competitive. And yeah, very interesting though. So if it's something that people are interested in and want to go into, then there's no reason why they shouldn't.
Yep. Okay. This is an interesting question. I've also wondered this. Is there differing career routes for prosecution and defence lawyers? And Julie, do you ever know of perhaps a prosecution and defence lawyer that were friends and then were up against each other in court?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's a very friendly bunch anyway. I think if you wanted to go into prosecution work, you would be looking at going to the Crown Prosecution Service, and if you wanted to go into defence work, you'd be going to look to work with a law firm. But you often come across the same people in your area. So my colleague worked in North London and would be regularly at Highbury Magistrates Court and meeting the same lawyers all of the time. So prosecution lawyers from the CPS and defence lawyers from other law firms. You do choose whether to be a prosecution or defence lawyer in your career, but you can of course change and change jobs, as many people do.
Yeah, okay. Georgina, is working in law, such as a family lawyer or criminal lawyer, obviously you concentrate on being a family lawyer, can it be quite dystopian or negative?
I think there's certainly a perception about that, certainly in family law. My grand's always saying to me, oh, it must be very sad though. And of course it is sad about hearing about other people's experiences and horrible things that happen in people's lives. I think that you need to have the right sort of personality to do the work, and I think that you have to focus, this is certainly what I do, focus on the outcomes that can be achieved and trying to find positive outcomes in people's lives and cases. Yeah, I think that's the way to approach it. But I think that if your natural disposition is going to be to feel that that's impacting on your own mental health, then perhaps family law, maybe criminal law isn't the area for you.
Yeah, okay. A couple of questions about combined law degrees. Does it lower your chances of being a lawyer if you do a combined course, Julie?
No, it depends. I say no. To become a solicitor, a legal executive, paralegal, no. If you want to become a barrister, there is still a requirement of doing a qualifying law degree to then go on to the bar training course or whatever bar professional course you go on to. So if you do look at a combined degree, you might want to check whether it's termed as a qualifying law degree for legal professional purposes, because if it isn't, then you might have some more exams to do after you finish your degree. But otherwise, out of interest, it's a good option to go for a combined degree.
Okay. There are more questions that are coming in. Really, we're not going to have an opportunity to ask all of them, so hopefully we've covered the main areas today. So before we wrap up, Julie, you gave some details of some good websites that people could have a look at. So there's a couple on the screen now. Do you just want to explain what they are and how they might be useful?
Yeah, definitely. So I recommend both of these regularly. The Lawyer Portal does also cater for people that are at school as well as at university, and it starts at a very introductory level to tell you about careers in the law, and then tells you a lot more about what it takes to become a solicitor and barrister, legal executive, paralegal, etc. It also, one thing we haven't mentioned a lot today at all is commercial awareness. So having that understanding of the world around you and how it impacts on yourself and your clients. So the Lawyer Portal can give you some introduction into that as well. So that's a great website. A really well-known website is lawcareers.net. So I really recommend looking at that one. It's extensive. You can lose yourself for days in it. It's got so much information in it. And what it will also talk about in both of these, but lawcareers.net to a greater degree, is about getting those internships that Jess was talking about, the vacation schemes. And it gives you some of the deadlines that are set by the larger law firms who do this on a very sort of strict recruitment basis. They have very specific deadlines throughout the year for applying for schemes and for applying for training contracts. So you can start getting used to the requirements and the key dates and deadlines and milestones by looking at that website.
Okay, and then really just to conclude, Jess, I'm going to ask you to tell everyone, if you were 16 again, what would be the key bits of information that you would like to have known about the journey that you've been on so far?
The time commitment, definitely, and being realistic about that. How difficult it is to get the training that you need to qualify. I think that would also be really useful. I think the importance of work experience and doing anything you can to have those interpersonal skills and to be around customers and clients, I think is really helpful, whether it's just any sort of work or within the legal profession is useful. Yeah, I think that's probably about all of them I can think of.
Okay, and then Georgina, so I'm just going to put this final slide I'm going to put up here, or put back up again as well. There's a QR code on there, so for those of you that are watching this live at the moment, if you take a picture of that QR code, that will take you to our page on the HOP website, that will give you access to all the previous webinars that we've run as well, and you'll also see our handles on there as well on our different social media platforms, so do have a look at those. HOP provides lots of information for students in Hertfordshire around various aspects of careers. So Georgina, final word from you really. What would you say to inspire anyone watching this at the moment that law is the career and the field for them?
I think people will know whether it's the career and field for them, but I think it's a wonderful, varied subject, and I think that it can be an incredibly fulfilling career, whichever area you end up going into, and I just think it's well worth it. So do it.
Good. Okay, well, ringing endorsement from all three of our lawyers who have joined us today. So let me conclude now, firstly, by thanking our panel, so for Julie, Jess and Georgina, and your employers as well for giving you the opportunity to come on and give up your time to share your thoughts and experiences with us. We hope it's been really, really informative and really quite inspirational for any of you watching at the moment. Apologies for any of you that are watching this back and weren't able to access the live session having registered for it. Really do apologise for that. It's just because it totally blew us away, the number of people that wanted to register for this one. So I suspect, Julie, that will be reflected through the UCAS system with the number of applications for undergraduates joining law programmes. So yes, thank you to those of you who were able to join us live and for submitting your fantastic questions. So if you do have further questions, once this video is on YouTube, we will open the comments section. So any questions that you want to type in there, do put them in and we can make sure they get through to the right person. So thanks for joining us this afternoon. We hope you've enjoyed it and the very best of luck in your future careers.